Treyarch just made some major changes to Call of Duty that has some players worried and are wondering if this will affect their gameplay. For example, popular YouTuber Chuki said this: slight reduction to slide duration. Why? It wasn't even long in the first place. Like, what is the point of that? LOL. So today we're going to be going over everything and find out for ourselves, is this as big of a deal as some players are making it out to be? Or is this just an attempt to balance all skill levels and it's part of the growing pains? I recently just put a video out talking about the changes to Call of Duty and how every single year it's kind of like the same thing repeated over and over again. We get a good beta, we get something that we really like, the community is in an uproar and they love things, and then the game comes out and it's nothing like what we had in the beta. Now, Treyarch seems to be going against the grain. Some people are going to like this and some people are going to hate it. Treyarch just released a blog today announcing the changes that are coming to Black Ops 6 on launch on October 25th. There's a couple really important notes here and I want to break it down and give you guys a scoop on what's going on. So first and foremost, let's talk about the headshot damage changes. Treyarch said, "We were so excited to see our new weapons in the hands of players throughout the beta and are grateful to have plenty of data and feedback to process as we look to balance updates for launch. A common piece of feedback we saw was that low headshot damage reduced the impact of skillful play and made it difficult to challenge certain power positions. We agree with these points and are working on adjustments to many weapons to reward players who land multiple headshots during an engagement. That said, we do not want hit location multipliers to significantly affect the consistency of time to kill in Black Ops 6. So we will continue to monitor the effectiveness of headshots during launch and beyond." Okay, so why is this a pretty big deal? Call of Duty, since the day it came out, has always had headshot multipliers. Some studios have a pretty crazy headshot multiplier and some studios have a pretty minimal one. Treyarch has always aimed to have a minimal headshot multiplier to try to keep the time to kill relatively consistent. Now, how do you balance, one, a skillful player who, let's say, is good at getting headshots and might be able to kill somebody incredibly fast, as opposed to somebody who's not as skilled, who only hits body shots and then they don't die as fast? There's a constant tug of war here constantly happening, and it's trying to find the sweet spot. At one point, you want to reward the higher skill players for being able to hit the headshots, but at the same time, you don't want to cause too much inconsistencies in the time to kill. For example, when Black Ops 6 beta launched, there was a very low multiplier to headshot damage. Apparently, the feedback suggested that this probably wasn't the greatest idea. For example, if somebody's sitting behind a powered position or a head glitch, they are nearly impossible to kill. Normally, in other Call of Duty games, you see somebody on a head glitch, you shoot their head, and they die in a couple bullets. Now, with Treyarch implementing the system, it takes a lot longer for them to die, which means that head glitch is way more valuable in every single gunfight. So what they aim to do is find some type of middle ground. They want to try to make it to where, hey, if you're a good player, you will be rewarded for hitting your headshots, but at the same time, you won't kill people as fast as, let's say, Modern Warfare 3 or Modern Warfare 2. I have my opinions on this, and I think I'm somewhere in between. I love the idea of a consistent time to kill because it's better for the casual community. But at the same time, for all these players like Diaz Biffle and Aiden, they want to be rewarded for the headshots and their increased accuracy. Now, let's put this into Warzone terms. The time to kill is significantly higher in Warzone as opposed to multiplayer, so we know that multiplayer and Warzone are 1-to-1 at the moment. Now, when this launches into Warzone, this could make for some pretty interesting scenarios. Now, imagine there's a player that's on high ground going against somebody that's on low ground. That player on high ground is on a head glitch and they look down. The likelihood of the player down low killing the player up top reduces significantly if the headshot multiplier is not as high. At that point, when the player down low is fighting the player above, the only chance you have at killing them is a headshot. Now, if the headshot multiplier is not as high, that means that power position becomes significantly more important. So will this change the game completely? I'm not too sure. I personally love a consistent time to kill, but at the same time, I also want to be rewarded for hitting my headshots. I do think Infinity Ward takes this probably a little bit too far. I hope Treyarch can find a good middle ground because, again, you should be rewarded for having better skill, but at the same time, you don't want to make it like Infinity Ward where you die in one bullet to the head. I want to emphasize the last sentence of this paragraph, and it says, "We will continue to monitor the effectiveness at headshots during launch and beyond." Now, this is a big thing that I really hope Treyarch does in the long term, and that's continuing to monitor things even after launch. Moving on to the next change, one of the biggest complaints I've seen in the entire community is that snipers do not feel good. So Treyarch has made changes and has decided to implement a couple different things. Treyarch said, clip. And of course, we continue to review data and feedback regarding general weapon feel and tuning, and we're always keeping tabs on overall weapon class balance in the context of our entire map pool. Some specific changes coming at launch include improvements to fluidity of sniper ADS, improved fluidity when swapping weapons during sprint and tactical sprint. We're excited about this one. Reduction of weapon motion during crouch transitions, small lift to shotguns, and targeted adjustments across all weapons to keep SMGs from overperforming relative to other classes. Weapon balance is an ongoing process and something we're working towards at every point in our live seasons. We'll be sharing specific details about balancing in our launch patch notes. So there's a couple things to break down here, not just with snipers. Snipers are a weird thing to balance. On one hand, you want to try to make these as good and as snappy as possible. But at the same time, most of these are one-shot kills, so you want to make sure they're not crazy fast or don't have the most insane ADS, because then everybody's going to be running around with a sniper. Now, I'm not too sure what they mean about improved fluidity of ADS with a sniper, but I really hope that means that ADS transitions just feel smooth. Again, in my last video, I did talk about how Black Ops 6 did feel clunky at times, and it didn't feel as snappy. So if they're making the changes to snipers, I really do hope this is just across the board fluidity in general. Now, the importance of this next change honestly depends on how much they tune this. It says improve fluidity when swapping weapons during sprint and tactical sprint. Now, how much did they improve this? Back in Modern Warfare 2, there was a patch that came out that said they were going to reduce the time after diving to when you can shoot your gun. The community was super excited for this, and we thought it was going to be really snappy. Come to find out, they changed this by 0.001 milliseconds. So, if they're saying improve fluidity when swapping weapons, when tactical sprinting and sprinting, what exactly does that mean? How fast is it? I did notice when going from Modern Warfare 3 to Black Ops 6 in the beta, whenever you're reloading your weapon and somebody pushes you and you need to YY to cancel your reload, it felt incredibly clunky in Black Ops 6. Now in Modern Warfare 3, it felt really snappy and instant. So I wonder how they're going to address this and how they're going to change this to make it more fluid. Next one is reduction of weapon motion during crouch transitions. In my opinion, sway, bobble, weapon motion during anything just doesn't feel right. I understand they're going for the realistic approach, but again, we're playing a video game. This is Treyarch, this is arcade style. So the fact that they're reducing motion and sway, I think that's a huge W. And lastly on this is small lifts to shotguns and targeted adjustments across all weapons to keep SMGs from overperforming relative to other classes. One of the big feedbacks that we gave from playing the game early at Call of Duty Next and during the beta was that SMGs felt incredibly overpowered. The PDW felt like it was absolutely insane. Now don't get me wrong, the gun felt amazing, but at the same time, it felt like you couldn't really use any other gun. If not, you were getting smoked. So I'm glad to see that they're trying to rebalance this in any little way. In my opinion, don't slow things down, make other guns a little bit faster. So it does seem like they're making changes to other weapon classes to kind of match the submachine gun class. Now next, let's talk about the most important change out of this entire video. If there's anything you watch, it's this. I talked about movement updates in the last video, and they keep adding delays and they keep slowing things down. And I said, I'm really scared for the launch of Black Ops 6 that in the beta, we're gonna have something that feels crispy and fast, even though it wasn't as crispy and fast, but the game was gonna come out, and then it was gonna be slow and clunky. Well, they addressed this as well. Let's go over it. Treyarch says, continued improvements to animation fluidity and fidelity throughout. We identified several areas for improvement to our third-person animation fidelity across slide, dive, jump, and supine prone. Our goal is that what you see in first person is representative of what others see in third person in order to maintain immersion and predictability. So pretty much what this means is they want to align what your character looks to opponents as opposed to what you think you look like in first person. I know that sounds confusing, but for example, you're snaking and you're able to see the enemy. In the enemy's perspective, you barely see your opponent's head at all. That is because the perspectives of first person and third person do not align. So they're trying to address certain things to make sure with Omni movement, because we know how crazy it is, that those two can try to be as one-to-one as possible. Now, here is the big one. Adjustments to slide for improved predictability and fluidity. During weekend 2 of the beta, we increased the time before you could enter supine during a slide. After further assessment based on your feedback, we reduced that time to find a nice middle ground between where we were in beta weekend 1 and weekend 2. In beta weekend 1, in typical Shotzi fashion, he found this movement exploit that lets you pretty much finesse the way your character looked and gave you this crazy movement buff. You would pretty much slide, hold your slide button, and instantly go into a prone. This made you incredibly hard to hit and honestly was really cool in my opinion. But I understand, Call of Duty is a game for everyone, and I'm not gonna lie, this movement in the right hands could be incredibly overpowered. So beta weekend 2, they pretty much added a big delay from when you can go from sliding into a prone. This kind of messed up a couple other things because the delay was almost too much. You would go into a slide and you would try to prone, even if you're not trying to do the Shotzi movement, and it would make you feel incredibly clunky. So now what they're trying to do here is kind of minimize that delay and try to make it to where it's a nice sweet spot. Now, in the second bulletin point, they said, reduce the minimum time to slide after sprinting to prevent accidentally crouching when intending to slide, also known as a dead slide. Okay, let's break this one down. T-Captain put out a video that said there are some changes to Black Ops 6 from Modern Warfare 3 as far as movement. He put the video and pretty much said that in Modern Warfare 3, as soon as you start sprinting, you can instantly slide or dive. In Black Ops 6, it's almost like you have to ramp up your momentum until you're able to slide or dive. This is probably the biggest issue with BO6 in making the game feel clunky. They added a delay that was, in my opinion, unnecessary. So in this, they said reduce the minimum time to slide after sprinting. The key word I want you to focus on is reduced. In Modern Warfare 3, there is no delay. It's 0. Treyarch using the word reduced and not removed gives me the impression that they want to add a slight delay. Now, we're gonna have to wait and see how this plays out in the game, but I'm a little bit concerned when you start adding delays, especially when Omni movement is supposed to be fluid, and this is supposed to be the biggest marketing thing for your game. Then you add delays, I get a little bit skeptical. And lastly, slight reduction to slide duration. Now, some people are not too happy about this one. YouTuber Chuki said, slight reduction to slide duration. Why? It wasn't even long in the first place. Like, what is the point of that? LOL. I understand where he's coming from. We are all traumatized from Modern Warfare 2 and how horrible that game was. Everything had a delay, everything was slowed down. So when we see them reducing the time for a slide, this kind of begs the question, will this be an ongoing thing? What this means is pretty much you're not able to slide as far as you used to. Now, again, they don't give us actual numbers, but how much is a slight reduction? Is this a notable difference to where it's not going to feel fluid, or is it as slight as they say it is? So how does this all implement into Warzone, and how does this all work? Black Ops 6 and Warzone are 1-to-1. So the movement you have in Black Ops 6 is 1-to-1 to the movement you're gonna get in Warzone. So think about this. In multiplayer, the maps are significantly smaller. In Warzone, the maps are huge. Small nerfs in movement kind of feel more dramatic in Warzone as opposed to multiplayer. For example, in multiplayer, unlimited auto tag sprint, I don't think you necessarily need it in multiplayer. Why? Because the time to action is incredibly fast. You run for a little bit and you're instantly in a gunfight. You run in a little bit, you're instantly in another gunfight. As opposed to Warzone, where you get into a gun engagement, then 2 to 3 minutes later, you're in another engagement. So getting from point A to point B, unlimited tag sprint matters significantly. I'm curious to see if the slight reduction to slide duration, and then the reduction, not removal, of the delay when you can slide and dive, how much that has an effect on Warzone. I really do hope that Treyarch can remove the delay completely to be able to slide after you run or dive after you run. Right now, in the current Warzone, there is no delay, so this could really change Warzone forever. Let me know in the comments below if you think that these changes would change things, or will it not matter in the grand scheme of things. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the camera motion. We're reducing overall camera motion on sprint, tag sprint, and slide. So what that means is whenever you're sprinting, tactical sprinting, and sliding, your camera will not be shaking like this, and it will try to be as smooth as possible between those different movements. With all these changes, I really do wonder how this will affect Warzone and Call of Duty in general. Will Call of Duty continue to go down this road where they add delays and they add these nerfs and not make the game feel completely fluid? Or will Treyarch finally be the game that takes all this out and tries to make a truly arcade style shooter?